And the thing that I have found most interesting in my students, and I can think of a couple of them in particular right now that is just wonderful, when they went from, I don't know what in the hell I'm doing, and I have this job that I'm working at, and it's just kind of okay, and I go home and I work out and I drink beer, to, oh my gosh, I am God, and everything that is in my life, I am creating. And they take that to work. Not that they're walking around talking about it, but they take that attitude. They've gotten raised up in salary. They've gotten raised up in position. They've, in many cases, chosen a different job that is much more self-enhancing. So many things happen. It's once you open the door to being who you are.
Hi, this is Scott Ware, the publisher and editor of Radiance magazine, which you can find at radiancemm.com. And this is Interviews on the Xpnsion network. And I have with me Toni Petronovich. Is that right?
Good work, Scott. Good work.
I've known you for a long time, and then of course we didn't talked for a lot of years, and I didn't quite remember, but actually you have a longer name, that you're a master teacher, and we're going to get into the IM and breathing techniques and how to thrive in these interesting times. But your name's actually a bit longer than that, and why don't you say what that is with the titles as well?
Reverend Dr. Toni Elizabeth Sarah Petronovich.
And Reverend Doctor, and what are you a doctorate of?
Metaphysics. I have a PhD in metaphysics.
Metaphysics, perfect. Okay, wonderful. And so you, it's funny because I just saw you, I don't know, in the last 3-4 months on Todd Medina's Soology show.
This is true.
And I'm like, there's Toni. Toni, I knew, my gosh, back when the internet was young, you and I met, you live in Washington, I live in California, and we met in Carolyn Mace's, on her site or in an email list, talking about all things spiritual. And I would say you were my first official, I would say, spiritual teacher. Not that we had that kind of official relationship like that, but it kind of ended up being that way. I remember I'd asked you a lot of questions. You had a lot of great answers. You remember that, right?
I do remember that, very much so. And it was way before the internet was the internet. It was like when email was like, ooh, we have email.
Yeah, and these email chains and threads and conversations that way. I thought we might have talked in a chat room on her site too. I seem to recall, but that was the 90s or early 2000s. So
somewhere in there.
And then we met in an airport when you were traveling. You were doing some work with somebody rather notable. Who was that?
Oh, Barbara Marx Hubbard. Yeah.
What kind of work were you doing with her?
I went to her house to work with her assistant. We were just doing kind of a gathering at her house, and her assistant had invited me to come. Can't remember her name right at the moment. It'll come back. And so I just spent a couple of days with Barbara. And in the midst of all of that, got a hold of you and came down to your house and had dinner with your family, which was just delightful.
That would, yeah. And we were talking about this before, and I didn't remember it at first, but it's coming back to me. But I remember meeting you in LA, you were on a layover, and we had a quick lunch. But this was so many years ago. Then I see you on Todd's show, and I was so glad you got to be in this most recent issue of Radiance, talking about something so important, which is breathing. You talk about the I am a lot. Yes. And you're a master teacher and master healer. And I know, just even booking this interview with you was a little tricky because you have a full schedule. You have a lot of classes going on right now. Is that right?
I do. I have roughly 10, 11, I lost count, classes that I'm teaching. And I teach most of them one-on-one through Zoom, through Skype. And usually either start out with a divine intensive, which is the place I really like to start because it it's a personalized course rather than saying, okay, you're going to buy my Path to Union course. Here it is. You enroll in that course and then you do the material and we get together 2 or 3 times and talk about how you're doing. Rather than that, the Divine Intensive is you filling out a questionnaire and then I create the intensive for you based on your answers. And each conversation we have, I then send you another piece to focus on based upon what we've talked about. And it's a very personal course.
It sounds very, yeah, you've customized it for that person specifically.
Right.
What would you say all your courses have in common? What is there a main goal of all your classes?
For people to recognize that they are God, that they are the I am, that there is no higher self, lower self. There is no need to pursue a specific practice. If you want to, fine. If it makes you feel good and makes you feel joyous and calm and gives you a sense of well-being, great. Sure. But it isn't about, I have to follow this practice or I will never be enlightened or I will never get to that place that I'm looking for, the there, that you're always looking for the there that is there. It is always about recognizing that in this very moment, as you are listening to us talk, all of you viewers, you are source informed. And when you come to the realization that that is true for you, what happens is you're free. And that's really the, if you want to call it a goal, I'm not sure it's a goal. If you want to call it a goal for my courses, is to free people from the beliefs that they have been so programmed to believe that it keep them tied up, locked up in this paradigm, whatever their paradigm is, that doesn't allow them to realize who they are and what they are.
So, and I'm on the same page. I know we are God as well. What resistance generally do people have to fully realizing that? Are there some top three?
Top 3 resistances. Let's see. Usually laziness. Okay. Not wanting to have to put in the time and the work to disband the beliefs. I'd say that's probably the first one. Busyness in life. I'm too busy to do this. I always get such a kick out of it. I'll say to a student, are you ready to talk about, class X, page Y? No, I don't have enough time. And I'll go on Facebook and there they are posting on Facebook, all these things. And so basically it's focus on what you're doing because people don't realize not how important it is, but that it's the only thing that they truly want to focus on. They just don't realize that. And then third, I'd say the resistance is just the programming, because it's really difficult often for people who believe that they are right or believe that they know based on belief ABC to move out of that space and into a space that literally dissolves that belief. Because what it says is, if I've been believing this all of my life, and I've been living my life this way, and now all of a sudden I'm going to no longer believe that, what does it mean for the rest of my life that I've already lived?
There's a ripple effect.
Yeah, there's a ripple effect, but they think that they've been living incorrectly, which they haven't. Those beliefs have brought them to this place, this stage, where they can now say, I get it. Okay, now I'm here. Isn't this delicious?
Right. Well, it's funny you say that because you talk about laziness, busyness, and conditioning. And before you got to conditioning, I was going to ask you, well, what's underlying the laziness, and you answered it, the conditioning. I would say I'm in that, I'm in between that, and I'm getting online, and it's sort of like a light bulb that's like blinking, flickering on until you screw it in all the way. And that's what I'm doing, because you're so right. It is the only thing, and we tend to forget that.
Well, there really isn't anything that's important in life. And even though your mind says, well, wait a minute, if I don't do this or that, I won't have my house, my car, my food, my relationship, my this or that. Okay, if you knew that tomorrow you were not going to be here anymore, how important would those things be? They wouldn't. I mean, you might want to say goodbye to somebody, but they just wouldn't be that important. And we don't know that we're not going to be here tomorrow. That's the best part.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you say the best part. So is that sort of like when people are on their deathbed and they have they just are very clear about what's important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because nothing else makes any difference anymore. Why would it? You're going to leave it, no matter what your belief system is.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any difference whether you believe you're going to heaven, you're going to be spirit, or you're going to hell, or you don't know what you're going to do. There's still this realization that all these things that you have called important, that you think are, the end all and be all of your life, aren't going to be there anymore. So now where do you want to place your focus? What do you want to focus on?
And how important is breathing and all of that? I know you're a big proponent of good breathing.
The breath is the inspiration of our life, if in both ways. We take a breath in, that's an inspiration. We breathe out, that's an exhalation. When you breathe in, you are breathing in everything that's in your room, your environment, your block, your city. When you're breathing out, you are breathing out you. Now, when you take that next in breath, you're breathing out what you have just breathed out into that environment. What do you want that to be? What do you want to breathe out so that when you inspire, when you take that next breath, you're breathing that back in? Is
For
it?
me, to answer that question, I want to breathe out the belief of separation.
Okay, then stay in separation. That's just it. There's no judgment. So you're saying you want to breathe out into the world separation? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I want to get rid of from me
Oh,
the
you want-
belief of separation. I see. You do it. Yeah. Okay. No, I want to breathe out to the world joy and love and peace.
Right. So you have to be that. You have to physically be that in your body. You have to feel it. So that as you are exhaling union, joy, peace, harmony, whatever it is.
Sure.
Realizing always, this is a big one, that your joy, peace, harmony is not the same as somebody else's. Our joy, peace, harmony in the United States is different than the joy, peace, harmony in Afghanistan. So when you move out of the judgment of what it's supposed to be, what you're actually breathing out in that way is coherency. Troughs and the crests of the energy wave are equal. That's how communication communicates. When you're breathing out your joy, peace, harmony, then you are not in judgment.
Right.
And it can just be whatever it is for everyone. And you can just sit back and let it be what it is.
So when you say that we should, obviously want to get rid of judgment, and that joy, my joy is not going to look like someone else's joy, isn't that really underlining the fact that we need to be doing for ourselves, and which can sound selfish, so that we should be servicing others, but actually, if you're putting out joy in the way you know how, and your joy, what people do with that is up to them, but at least you're putting out a high vibe. But what they do with it is up to them.
This is true. And this is why we talk about coherency. And in my classes, I talk about coherency a lot. Because as I said, it's the wave, the up and the down are equal. Coherency within your body is the feeling of harmony, peace, etc. The fact that we are doing this interview through the internet is reliant on a coherent carrier wave. If all of a sudden our voices got staticky or the picture got pixelated, that would be incoherency. So when you are transmitting coherency, you allow another person to come into coherency as well, because all of nature is coherent. The birds, the trees, the fruits, the flowers, the vegetables, they're all coherent. Humanity is created in coherency through fear, through beliefs, through programming, etc. When you transmit coherency through your joy, your peace, your harmony, other people then have a capacity to become coherent around you. It's like walking into a room and you go, wow, there's Maisie and she's got really good vibes. You're picking up on her coherency.
Right.
Or if you see Frank, there's Frank, he's always mad. That's his incoherency.
Right.
So when you transmit that, then it's easy for you to receive it back. But at the same time, the coherency you're transmitting can be used however it's going to be used by the other person.
Does that weigh into the subject of a lot of people do things in service to others because they think it's the thing they should do, and it sounds good, it looks good, but if you're not doing it with love and coherency, you got to go back to the drawing board on that one, right?
Right. And I always tell people that everything that they do in service is to benefit themselves. Always. It's always, everything's always personal. And I told this to a man once, and he was very upset by that statement.
Sure.
And he said, that's not true. And I'll tell you why I know. The man next door got really, really sick. And I don't even like him, but he has nobody in his life at all. And I went over there for a week and I took care of him every single day. And finally he got well. And I hated doing that. How is that benefiting me? And I said, oh, easily benefiting you. Because if you hadn't gone over and done that, you would feel worse about yourself than the fact that you went and did it. You feel so good about yourself that you're telling me all about it.
Yep.
So it's always a personal benefit, not to say that the person didn't get benefit from being taken care of course, whatever the service is. But when we realize it's for our own personal benefit, then we can say, okay, why am I really doing this?
Well, what I love is your intuitive abilities, or your just your ability to pick up on. You didn't take the bait on what he said. You listened to the deeper part, because he said, I didn't like it, but the fact is you got that he did it at a deeper level.
And that's because I always teach people to ask questions. If it wasn't apparent to me, which it was, what was going on,
sure,
I would have asked him questions. Asking questions. In fact, on November 14th, I am doing a Zoom conference call. It's going to be a class talking about communication. It's called Learning to be Heard, Learning to be Heart, so that you can learn how to ask questions and carry on a conversation from your heart space, because the holidays are coming and people are going to be having a hard time. Asking questions will always, always, always take you to the bottom of what's going on. I got an email yesterday from a student who said, long email, and I'm not going to quote it all, but the long email was all about all of these beings, St. Francis, somebody else, Kimura, some master Kimura, blah, 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 and who they were in their lifetime and how they had traded souls and where they, and he just went on and on and on and on. And he wanted me to comment on this and tell him how that all happened. And I emailed it back and I said, why is this important to you? Because I want to figure out my lives. And I said, there's no lives to figure out. You're living this life. This is your life. There's nothing to figure out. Well, somebody told me I needed to figure out my lives. Okay, now we're at the bottom of why I got this long email. Easy to have been just caught by it, trying to explain it, blah, blah, blah. Whenever you ask questions of a person, and it's a great way to be a conversationalist, whenever you ask questions, you will find out where they really are. Because everybody that says something to you is asking it for a personal reason. It might appear like they're asking it about you, but it's always a personal reason. Underline always.
There you go.
And if you ask questions about it, you'll find out where they're really coming from.
Well, and wasn't he sort of really looking for what is your purpose?
I don't know. He didn't continue the conversation.
Okay.
Which was fine.
Sure.
If he wanted to. And I told him, I said, if you really want to find out about living your life, you want to do a divine intensive with me, which he's not doing. He's doing one of my other classes that's just all self-guided. And he didn't come back. So it's okay.
By the way, could you give your website so people can check out even while they're watching this interview?
Sure. youaresacred.com. It will take you to my main website, which is sacredspaceswa.com, which is way too long to remember. Just youaresacred.com, and it points right to Sacred Spaces.
And you have classes available, and that's the main thing you do. And it's interesting, you do these one-on-one classes, so that's very intensely personal for sure.
It is personal, and in fact, I was talking to somebody the other day about the difference between group classes and personal classes. And I hadn't really, when you start talking and all of a sudden you're hearing yourself talk and you go, wow, that's a really good thought. And I hadn't really thought of it this way before, but they wanted to know what I felt, what I was feeling in the difference between a group class and a personal one-on-one class. And I said, well, of course, there's good things to be said about both. And in a group class, you can't go as deep as you want to go because people are in a group and they're always going to hold back a little bit because of group dynamics.
Sure.
No matter how safe the group is. I've done workshops that lasted 5 days and we went really deep, but I know if I got one-on-one with a person, we'd go even deeper. So the one-on-one class is just you and me. And if some people want them recorded for later use, fine, but it's not going anywhere else. And the people can really go to where they want to go without fear of somebody else thinking something bad about them or afraid to say something or what have you.
Sure. So what that deep is, what kind of people should be looking for you to take one of these one-on-one classes?
Anyone who wants to know their divine nature. And at the same time, I will say this. I am very direct. I am, as one of my students called, a ball buster. She said it takes spiritual balls to work with you. I will not let you play games with me. My partner calls me Sergeant Toni. I will immediately call you on anything that is you trying to be spiritual or appear a different way or show me how great you are, all of the things that people try and do with a teacher.
Sure.
And
well, I'd love to hear some examples of that.
Some examples of that.
Like, where do people try to pull a fast one on Dr. Toni?
Oh, I don't think that they're actually even trying to pull a fast one. I think that people are so programmed and so used to using words that they don't know what they mean. Like earlier, you and I were talking about ascension. People are always talking about ascension.
Yeah.
And my question is, okay, ascension, where are we ascending to? And you said,
I think we're levitating to the clouds.
To our higher self. But there is no higher or lower self because all that is all that is. So your lower self is as much God as what you think your higher self is. This is all separation. Instead of realizing it is all one, it is all union. And scrubbing the floor in the kitchen is as religious and spiritual and holy as sitting in meditation for hours at a time. There is no difference. The only difference is how you feel about it, what you believe is true.
So if someone said to you, okay, so you brought that up because they might use that?
I brought that up because they might use that. I'm not sure what
they might use that to, because we talked about you're a straight shooter and
oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so yeah, so they might, well, I'm just trying to get to ascension and I'm trying to get to this and that, and I will tell them just what I just said and see where that goes. And usually most people, when I began talking from that viewpoint, will either say, oh, wow. And I've had people say this to me just recently, actually. Nobody talks like this. Nobody says this. I'm so glad to hear that. Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. Or they will back down because now I'm treading on their holy toes. And some people will just continue on with the course, but on their own. They don't want me to help them because they don't want to have to face that. And it just depends upon the person. I don't think anybody really gets on Zoom or Skype in a course that I'm doing with them to try and take me on or do anything to be confrontational. I don't believe that they do. I think that people are just so used to saying the things that they say and living the way that they live that they don't realize that it's just like using the same toothpaste over and over again because you don't realize that the ingredients are bad. Just someone told you to do it, and now you think you need to do it. So I always suggest to people that it'd be really, really good to take any belief you have, and I've done this a lot, and it's really fun. It's work, but it's fun. Any belief you have, and trace it back to its origin point, and see where you got it. And then from that point, find out who formed it. What was it formed for? Because it's always about control. Beliefs are only about control. They're not there for any other reason.
You say the fewer beliefs you have, the more free you are.
Right. And even saying I don't have a belief system is a belief system. So Everybody has some belief system about something.
So like we need some ego to operate in this world.
Well, yeah, and the ego personality is God too. That's it. I have one of the pieces that I use for my divine intensive is how to love your ego personality, and how not to see it as separate.
Right. Okay.
Because it is source expressing.
So
I'm expressing a source, you're expressing a source, and everybody viewing us is viewing a source.
so when you shake up somebody's beliefs by doing what you just did with Ascension, because if we believe all is one, then everything is one. We're all one with God. We are God. When people accept and then they lay it down, what do you see? Do you see, and I imagine people probably share this in testimonials about you, but do you see a relief? Do you see anxiety? You know, or what do you see? Do you see that kind of acceptance?
Beauty. Well, if they want to accept, okay, like I said, some people don't. The people who do, Scott, so many of them just literally take it to the bank. I have a beautiful student, Pam Kale, rainbowria.com, if you want to go and look at her website, who went from just such pain to now with this website. She does these gorgeous paintings of people's spirit. They're just fantastic.
Okay.
And she literally changed her whole family life. She changed everything. I have another student who's a teacher, and there's my website. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the teacher now is absolutely aware of the fact that she has got it. All of her classes are changing. Somebody sent me a testimonial the other day. It starts out with, "You have saved my life." Wow, that was a big one.
Very big.
Yeah, people, when they get it, they really get it. And yet there are times sometimes when people don't want to get it right now. And that's okay too. It's whenever they're ready. And maybe in this lifetime, maybe in another lifetime.
Sure. How is the I am different from source? Why use that phrase as opposed to anything else?
Because I like it. There's no difference.
Uh,
I like I am because it is so neutral. Source works, but source also makes you feel like creator, like a source of something.
yes.
And when I teach, what I teach is I am is, and that which you would consider creator emanates from I am itself. And it's really hard to use words to describe what we're talking about today because words just don't work, but we need them to express. So if I am is everything, then an aspect of I am is creator, and creating this dimension, other dimensions, this universe, all the many universes there are. Universe is one verse. All the verses
Right.
that exist are created through creator, which is an aspect of I am. That's the easiest way I can express it.
Well, you mentioned something about it's difficult to talk about these things in words. How much of your lessons are energy transmissions or even light language and that sort of thing?
Advertise that way or consciously or just happening? Which way do you mean that?
Just happening, because I would think if it's difficult to express in words that you would do it in any way. And of course, I imagine healing is probably a part of it, where I know you do remote healing.
I do. Every conversation we have, this conversation is an energy transmission.
Yes.
I don't advertise it that way because it begins to make people feel very woo-woo, and I don't want to go to woo-woo. We just get caught up in that. I want people to really do the work they need to do to understand what they are. And as I'm talking to them, as I'm looking to them, one thing I do say always is that I will mirror God to you. When you look into my eyes, you will see God. And I will mirror that God back to you, always, always. And that's why I don't let people quote unquote play games, because that's keeping them from seeing that Godhead. And that's what I want them to see and understand in themselves.
I love that. Okay. The classes that you're teaching now, can you talk about the range of subjects that you're covering, that you offer?
Okay, it was a Divine Intensive. Then I teach a class on metaphysics, which is really a foundational course for all my other courses. It's one of the first courses that I created. It's 12 lessons on literally how this world works through spirit. And meta means beyond. So it's beyond physics, so to speak. I like to think of it as an underpinning underneath physics.
Okay.
I have one on the path to union, which is, it's kind of a dual class. It's one that a person can use to come to a better relationship with themselves, or it's one that a couple can use or two friends can use to come to a better understanding in their relationship. Divining your truth is literally teaching you how to receive information from within the cosmos, so to speak. Because I do spiritual readings, and people have always said, I wish I could do spiritual readings. So I created a course that, okay, if you want to be able to get information that isn't just in your mind, here's the steps you need to take. And that's divining your truth. I've got one on the audacity of your intention to teach you how to use intention. Trusting aloneness so that you're okay being alone. Relief from belief is all about shattering beliefs.
Sure.
Let's see what else. The art of creation, which is one of my newest classes. When all this COVID happened, I decided the art of creation needed to be created because people are trying to recreate themselves. So, and it goes for any time, not just when we're having, an epidemic of a disease. It's about looking at how you live your life right now, the beliefs you're living from right now, how you give away your authority, what you intend to create, and how to create that. And that creation could be a physical creation, like a business or a dress or a garden, or it could be a whole new way of being, depending upon how you want to be in your life.
What do you recommend to people who are wondering, who are thinking, well, maybe I'll check out Toni's site and see what class she has, or read the testimonials and the class descriptions. But what would you recommend to people who are almost getting there? What kind of stock should they take of themselves? If they were to write something down in a journal, what questions might you recommend they ask themselves?
Why do you believe what you believe? Go back to tracing your beliefs. What benefits you get from those beliefs? There's always an underlying benefit from anything.
Aren't most beliefs though kind of invisible to us, if you know what I mean? Like they're just so
Oh,
apart. Like, yeah.
Yeah, they're givens. Everybody knows that. My mother used to say, 1,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong, because she was French. Well, 1,000 Frenchmen can be wrong.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that are givens. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way it is. Depending upon what country you're raised in, what religion you're raised in, what your family was like, everybody's givens are different. But there's this underlying current of how it's all supposed to be.
When it comes to challenging beliefs, don't people sort of back into that? It's not like they say one day, I'm going to challenge my beliefs. Don't they aren't they experiencing pain or discomfort or anxiety in their life or stress? And then they come to find out it's perhaps they can get there to find out it's because of an underlying belief that is not serving them.
Yes, there's usually something that happens in life that causes a person to start to question.
Right.
Very often something drastic. Like people talk about bottoming out. Doesn't have to be through addiction. It can be bottoming out for any reason.
Sure.
At the same time, it doesn't have to be that drastic. It can simply be, I'm really tired of living like this. I'm just not happy. I'm just not happy living this way. So it depends upon where a person is in their life, and again, how willing they are to do the work. I feel that people who have had a drastic occurrence in their life that has drastically uprooted their lifestyle probably are more willing to do something, to make changes, than somebody who's just kind of, I'm just not happy. Right. Because the benefit for the first person I'm talking about is greater, and therefore they'll put out more energy towards what needs to be done than the other person.
Right. Tell me again why you don't like this whole ascension business.
Because it's not that it's so much I don't like it. I just think it's funny. It's very Christian based. It has to do with Jesus ascending. That's what it's all about. I mean, that's where it came from. Just think about it. If in the Bible it never talked about Jesus ascending anywhere, would anybody be talking about ascension?
No,
Well,
they'd be talking about whatever he did. I mean, he had to do something when he came out of the tomb after he'd spent time with the apostles, and then yeah, he just sort of went up. Yeah, I see what you mean.
so people want to ascend. Okay, but where are you ascending to? And if they say, well, heaven, okay, now we're talking about beliefs again. And you're talking about the Christian Bible. Personally, and I know this is probably going to offend some people, so spoiler alert, we do not know that a man named Jesus ever existed. The only place he is talked about really is in the Christian Bible. Josephus, who is the historian, I have done research on this for years. Josephus is the Jewish historian, makes no mention of him. There is one liner in one section of his book, which is huge, that says something about during this time period, there was a man healing people, and then he just goes on.
What about the gospels that were found in the in the caves? The gospel according to Thomas, which was separate for many years. Actually, I don't recall if it mentions Jesus particularly, but it does say like the kingdom of God is within.
Right. But that was the Essenes teaching. See, the Essenes taught the way. So in the Bible, the New Testament, when they're talking about Jesus saying, I am the way, it's because that was the Essenes. It's like saying I'm a Christian. You'd say, I follow the way. That means you're an Essene, which means you live out in the desert because the Romans were constantly trying to kill you.
Okay.
So if you really do the research into what all of this means, and there's wonderful books. One of the greatest writers was Lawrence Gardner. If anybody wants to start looking at any of his books, he was a wonderful man. He died in 2010, was knighted by the Queen of England. I mean, just this great guy. I went and heard him speak once. It was terrific. And he spent years upon years doing research, etymology of words. Where does Satan come from? From the Satan who tested the people in the temple. He was the tester. Physical, studious book tester. But the Christians took it and made it into Satan. So you just get to really find out where all these words came from and where all these beliefs came from. And then you see it's just all more of the same. It's just a belief.
So whether Jesus the man existed, is less important than the idea of Christ consciousness. Isn't that right?
Right. And Christ, the word Christus means anointed. So your anointed consciousness is your divinity. You are consciously aware as God. Now, you might not believe that, but you have an opportunity to become aware of it if you will take those steps to do so. And of course, that's always the question. Are you ready? Are you ready to make the leap?
I remember I asked you a long time ago, way back when we were emailing way back then, I said something to you along the lines of, because I think you said something like you represented this person who was holding a light on a hill. Do you remember that conversation at all? That
No,
you were like a beacon, and I said to myself, I said something along the lines of, I want to be that. I want to do that. And you said something like, well, you have to be ready to do that, because when you are doing that, it's a commitment of sorts. Although that sounds like you know what I'm saying? It's like you are that person. You were that person then, and you are that now. It's just not everybody that can just go up to the hill and just hold that light, that candle, and
I vaguely remember this, because once you start holding that beacon, then you don't get to put it down.
there you go.
Yeah, so you have to be ready to make that commitment to hold the beacon and say, I won't put it down. I'm going to hold this beacon. My arm's not going to get tired, so to speak.
Exactly. And I assume you are creating more beacon holders out there.
I believe I am.
Very nice. What would you like to say about a spiritual practice to people? Is that important? What do you recommend there?
Well, first of all, I always say, don't take on a practice. I mean,
Don't take what?
Don't take on a practice to
Okay.
start with, okay?
There you go.
Because if you take on a practice, you're taking on a practice for an end result. I am going to light these candles and sit in meditation and om and read this book every single morning, and in a year I will be enlightened. You know, there'll be some end goal. If there is something that makes you feel good, brings you a sense of well-being, makes you feel like you are really experiencing being the I am, go for it until it doesn't become important anymore. Because eventually what you'll find out as time goes by is that all of your life is that practice. That there isn't any time that you need to do something special that is different than breathing and living your life.
Because the goal, isn't it, is to wake up and stay awake.
Mm-hmm. In the midst of a cataclysm, literally. You know, people say, I can't meditate, it's not quiet enough in here. Learning to meditate is about learning to meditate in the noise, not having to be more quiet.
So in a way, so some people might say, like at the beginning of this interview, you were saying something, it's, you got to do the work. It sounds like work. And work sounds hard, right? And a lot of people might say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work. I just want to, I want to be God. But when you say work, what that really means is freeing yourself of layers of oppression or just limits, right?
Right. And I also tell people that they can take the word work out of their vocabulary and replace it with play. But when I say willing to do the work, what I'm meaning is they have to be willing to decide that they are no longer going to be attached to all of the belief systems that they are presently attached to, because it's all about attachment.
Right.
And when they decide to detach from that, there's going to be some rocky waves, potentially, for a little while. Some really big, maybe, and some not so big. But most of the time, it's not a big deal. It just feels like it might be a big deal. But it could cause some rocky waves in your relationships, your family, your job, who knows, depending upon how much all of those different situations are being impacted by what you believe. Because when you start changing personality, because you will, other people are going to notice. So are you ready and willing to do that? Are you ready and willing to hold that beacon you were talking about?
Yeah, yeah. And I think people are afraid of that kind of change because then they say, well, but I thought I was this other person. Now I seem to be this other person. So I think I'm betraying myself. But in reality, they're betraying a self that was conditioned by society.
Right. And it's not their quote unquote real self, so to speak.
Right.
It's not the being that they want to be. And the thing that I have found most interesting in my students, and I can think of a couple of them in particular right now that is just wonderful, when they went from, I don't know what in the hell I'm doing, and I have this job that I'm working at, and it's just kind of okay, and I go home and I work out and I drink beer, to, oh my gosh, I am God, and everything that is in my life, I am creating. And they take that to work. Not that they're walking around talking about it, but they take that attitude. They've gotten raised up in salary. They've gotten raised up in position. They've, in many cases, chosen a different job that is much more self-enhancing. So many things happen. It's once you open the door to being who you are.
We gotta, I mean, we're so surprised. Yeah, oh my God, I'm God and I'm creating, and those, we gotta change that expression to, oh me God.
Oh me God, yeah. Exactly.
Well, that,
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's really the end result for everyone. That's really what they want.
Well, that is a beautiful note to end on, because I have a feeling people are going to be interested in seeing and looking at your website. What is the website again?
youaresacred.com.
And the final question, let's just go with that. Why am I sacred?
Why are you sacred? Well, because of what the word sacred means. It means that you are divine. You are the I am. And some people, excuse me, don't want to consider themselves divine because it makes them feel like they're trying to put themselves over other people, like, yeah, I'm better than somebody because I'm sacred and divine.
Yep.
Everyone is sacred and divine. So when you realize that you are sacred and everyone is sacred, then you're in union in that sacredness, and that is the I am.
Beautifully said, Master Teacher Toni Petronovich.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be with you again after all these years.
I agree. Yes. Thank you for doing this interview, for being in Radiance Magazine. And again, people can go to youaresacred.com. And everybody out there, thank you for watching. Namaste. Thank you, Toni. Namaste.